Keep informed, John.
Yeah.
Right, we're going live, everybody.
Okay, mate. I thought you looked away a bit today.
That's on, Paula.
We're on.
Good. Right, it's 7 o'clock. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Chairman.
Welcome to Buckingham Town Council Planning Committee. And thank you, everybody, for your help, particularly with planning and neighbourhood plan at the annual town meeting last week. Very successful. The weather wasn't kind, but still a lot of people turned up. And, thank you all safe to our staff.
And Chairman, for rain these lighter nights we've got now.
So we have no members of the public. All are not waiting there, no. So we start the meeting then with apologies for absence.
Apologies from Councillor Davis and Mrs. Collins.
Right. Martin Try and Fran Davis both still there. They were sending our apologies to you.
Yeah, Councillor tries.
Right. Well, he made them to me, so does that suffice?
Yeah, that counts.
Okay.
Never apologising to me, so.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest, received declarations of any personal or prejudicial interest under consideration on this agenda. Robin?
Just the usual ones, Chairman.
Usual. Anybody else? No.
I won't comment on the application, just in case it happens, then we have to one day. You know, there's always a chance.
Yeah. During the current term of this council.
Well, in the term of this council, I'm hoping to meet at least once more without the those powers to be in the chairman sign there. Quite like.
Right, we've got the minutes of the planning committee meeting held on the 27th of February. Thank you, Catherine and Paula. I've got them here. Now we can pass those as a true record.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. They will go to council for approval. Right, item 4, quite an unusual one. You'll be aware that over the past couple of years, we've been very careful when the planning notices haven't been put up to put a disclaimer when we respond that anything should come up. We reserve the right to change our comments, and it's happened in the case of number 1, Pateman Close. Neighbours, there's 5 houses there. 4 of the neighbours have objected to development of number 1 on the grounds that the plans that were put in by number 1 were not accurate.
Yep.
That some of the information wasn't accurate. For instance, the application said it was Pateman Close as a mixture of detached and semi-detached. It's not. It's 5 detached houses. And the neighbours have asked for a recount. Basically, number 2, which is the closest house, claims it's going to be taking more than natural light than the plan originally suggested. I hope you've all had a chance to see the plans that Catherine put there. We just really need to decide tonight, do we change our no objection to an objection based on this? Right.
Yes, Chairman, I would wholeheartedly agree that we object on the grounds of what's in this report. It's quite disingenuous that the measurements were wrong and things weren't accurate on the plans. It's not right. So I would like to object to it.
Thank you. That's the proposal. John?
I would second that, obviously. I think it's appalling, frankly, that people should try and pull the wool over the eyes of the planning officers involved, and including us, the town council. If it is what, you know, we have to take the word, obviously, of the person who submitted the very detailed, and until I saw the pictures, completely opaque description of what was going on. But when you see the pictures, it's blooming obvious. So photographs would have been easier, as well as some drawings, because that would verify completely what he's saying. But on the basis that we accept that the person who's written to us is telling the truth, and we've got no reason obviously to doubt him, then obviously we should change our view.
Thank you. There are a couple of other issues which are being raised by the complainants. One is going to be about the covenant on these 5 houses
Yeah.
that says there should be no extensions other than quality garden sheds.
Yeah.
And so the rear building line of these houses will be interrupted by about 4 meters by this extension. So they're raising that. The other question is Peyton Close, as you probably all know, is a very steep, short drive into a very tight close. And the other 4 properties are all concerned about construction traffic.
Yeah.
Robin, I think you wanted to say something about that, even though you said you're not voting.
I'm not voting. I'll just say that is this to do with the Lace Hill?
No, Peyton Close,
Payment close.
about the traffic,
Well,
construction
I
traffic.
think that what I've encountered with historical applications, and I won't comment on whether you agree or don't agree with it, is that whatever the turnout of the application, we need to be putting some development conditions within the application, such as like times of working, traffic movements, and such so. Because if we don't ask that, and the authority agrees the application, then we'll have the residents in there with no life and nothing. I mean, there's a common set to do with times of working and traffic movements, and to do with when materials can be moved in and out of the site. Because if we all know, dependent on the decision, that the Brackley Road is not renowned for being the quietest road, and the residents of Peyton's Close, and also just to note that Councillor Peyton's an awfully decent chap, and he was also Mayor of Buckingham and a district councillor in his time. I wouldn't have advised to travel in the car with him. He was quite dangerous as a passenger, I
Could we
understand.
stick to the subject?
Yeah.
Anyway, point noted. Does anyone else want to speak? We've had a proposal by Councillor O'Donoghue, seconded by Councillor Harvey. We'll put it to vote. All those in favour of objecting on those grounds?
And that's everybody but Robin.
Thank you very much. Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan is the next item, 5 on your agenda. Vale of Aylesbury Plan, Buckinghamshire Local Plan, to receive any update. Sheena's not here tonight.
I've got nothing, I would assume that everybody got something.
Yeah, so we do have our working group meeting this Thursday morning. Robin.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to say, unfortunately, I'll be in another meeting in Aylesbury at the time. But I would like you to, looking at the figures that I've seen, definitely school education. I think that whatever we do, we need to seriously start drilling down into that, plus what going forward is likely to be the growth. And also, as we're all aware, funny enough, there's been quite a few children born in the past 2 years. I haven't really got, I couldn't really get a clue what the cause of that was. And the life of the plan will be the life of those very children who are going to be born now.
Yeah.
And whether we provide an additional school, junior school or literature school, my view is, looking at the figures, it's secondary education which is going to be needed.
Yeah.
And I think we seriously need to actually look at addressing that, because though they built new schools in other places and they've been quite successful, and one of them you talked about the other day in children's and education, it isn't Buckingham, it's in Aylesbury. And I really hate the job that children's first thought for secondary school education was to be on a bus, but most of their educational life they're not going to progress them and doesn't help them into the community. So whatever we do that. And I know that I spoke to the head of the secondary school some time back, but with all that's going on, he hasn't necessarily got back to us. But I do think that's a point that we need to start talking to start building blocks about what he thinks. Because the grammar school, of course, is a regional education facility, and the figures that go in there are very small compared to the catchment in Buckingham. The figures are all freely available.
Oh, I was going to answer that.
In fact, if I could just say to Robin, we have actually preempted you on that, Robin, because Sheena asked me to write a paper on education based on the Vale of Aylesbury Infrastructure Delivery Plan, which I'm presenting to the meeting on Thursday. It's about how we face future education in primary and secondary schools. And I also was asked to do one on health. Anthony was asked to do one on employment. And so we've got all those bases covered. So thank you, Robin. We are very.
But are you doing it with the current figures or estimation of figures?
Well, at the moment, this is the paper that is going to be before the meeting.
No,
We'll then go to our
I'll
consultants.
catch up with you on that.
Yeah.
Outside the meeting.
So it's very detailed. It's based on the IDR figure, the infrastructure delivery figures. Although that was written in 2017, I have updated it to 2023, taking into account school places and the growth in population. Lisa.
Thanks, Jeremy. So I think it was, I don't know who it was, one of our Shire councillors mentioned at the meeting last week that these figures had come out. So it would be interesting to see them.
Yeah, I need to
how our schools.
put my head with Robin before Thursday.
Yeah, but also it'd be good to know what our other catchment schools are facing, because Elizabeth Woodville and, you know, we've got other schools in different counties that we're not necessarily going to be having their figures, but our kids go there. We know that because mine did.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, one of the things in the infrastructure delivery plan is there should be a new primary school or a new entry form for every 700 new houses. Or we've had 1,100 new houses since 2011 with no new entry form or new school. So things like this that I've covered in my paper.
Good.
Robin?
Yeah, just to say, I mean, I was talking to the Director of Education, and in his note, when I asked him about circulating the figures, he said, I'm very happy for the information to be shared confidence, need to know basis, and the general, not generally with public. So I'm not sure how we deal with that confidential need to know basis, but he wrote in respect to the need for the Vale of Plan. But what I can say is that the figures, without giving details away, the figures continue to rise to 2031. So, and that's probably not built in what we said about the young people now. So they continue to ride over above what is in school. And of course, it also, what we have to recognise is that the closure of the sixth form in the Fremantle school means that there is a dearth in sixth form places, period. So we really need to make sure that, as the chairman is going to do, that we do a real soft copy on this, because you're going to be in a better position as town council to recognise the need than the whole Buckinghamshire matching the need and the needs of Buckinghamshire, because we really don't want children to be on buses going everywhere.
Thank you very much, Robin. And this is obviously a working document, and this is going to go ahead. After further, these documents will go to our town planning, our neighbourhood plan consultants for their information, so that will be built into the plan. Thank you. Action reports. Receive action reports as per the attached list. Item number 6. Sorry, I do apologise because I know Anthony's waiting there. North Bucks Parishes Planning Consortium. Anthony Ralph is our representative, and we had to postpone this from last month. Appendix B, the very concise and comprehensive report from Councillor Hardcastle, made Morton Parish Council. Anthony.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, this was a briefing paper written by Councillor Hardcastle for members of the MBPPC. And it is, as you say, it's extremely comprehensive, and I offered it to council as part of my report as our representative, simply because I felt he encapsulated just about everything we think about this, and I'm extremely glad that we're going to use this as a basis for the discussion this evening.
Right, is there anything you wish to add to that at the moment, Anthony? Or?
I don't think so. It would be gilding the lily to do so, I think, to be perfectly honest.
Said it all, yes. Robin.
One of the striking things that right agricultural land was around £20,000 per hectare. That's one of the things is why house prices are. You add building price on agricultural land prices, is why land prices are really so expensive, and why houses aren't likely to come down in the short to medium term. But it was a good read.
Yeah, my feeling would be that we should forward this to our neighbourhood planning officer, so she can go through it and incorporate, you know, just not cherry pick, it's the wrong word, but you know,
Select from it. Yeah.
select from it, yeah, for our revised neighbourhood
Yeah.
plan. So, Lisa.
Thanks, Chairman. It's interesting, the feeling that officers seem to be working for developers and not for residents, because there was a training that I think myself and Anthony went to. Actually, I think you might have been there as well. And that was the feeling that I think a few of us around the table got. It's like they're almost treating the developers as their clients, or it was a word that was used, and it was like, it felt a bit cosy. So it's very interesting to read that in this report, because that was what, 4 or 5 years ago that training must have been.
Yeah, and of course it was echoed when we went down to Aylesbury, one of the last planning meetings we ever went to, about 130 houses made at Morton Road phase 3. Councillor Harvey's nodding sagely down there. Did you want to add something, John?
No, to say that I think it's a very good report. It covers all the issues that we raised at various times in this committee. What can you say? It identifies so many of the problems that we're facing in terms of working with the up-tier council on important planning matters. I think the thing that I struck with me this evening was the fact that the 2 planning applications that went through in Mains Morton and on Morton Road both went through on the chair's casting vote.
Yeah,
And as we all know, the chair's casting vote should always only go for the status quo, which in this case would be no bill.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just an appalling abuse of governance. And it's shocking.
Yeah. Robin, something you wanted to add? Or?
Yeah, I mean, there's a mixed view on that, John. In planning terms, sometimes very unlikely that a chair should, not defending the decision, I'm saying that the chair usually has to support the officer's report, because the chair has responsibility for the agenda of the planning meeting. So to go with the status quo would be with the officer's report. But nevertheless, if it's a home vote and it's still through it's the chairman's vote. The one question which I do think we do seriously need to ask is, you will recall some months back, I gave you a response to a written question over who does what on Buckinghamshire Plan. Now, at present, and it cannot be said strongly enough, the Buckinghamshire Plan steering subgroup consists of chairs of planning committees, it consists of cabinet members, and it consists of senior planning officers. There's one thing in that you might note, that no chair of any planning committee on Buckinghamshire Council is a member of any opposition group, being independent, whatever. So basically the plan's being put together by quite a select few people. I think it would be worth asking the question whether the constitution of Buckinghamshire Council allows proportionality in subcommittees. They'll say no. But it does worry one, a whole chunk of people, including their own members of the controlling group, are not having an input into it, because their concerns will very much mirror anybody else's concerns. It will have nothing to do with politics. It's about your constituency interests. I think it might be worth us undertaking to verify those facts, see if they give a different answer to they did in public question, and to ask how they feel the Constitution matches that against the aspirations of the proportionality rules within the Constitution. The proportionality rules says that all committees should be split up by per rata mathematical equation around the makeup of the council, which would mean there would be somebody, she or he, would be on the subgroup. And I worry that this is a weakness, because following I know Councillor Harf has made this point quite valiantly in our meetings about the chairs of the planning committees having the say over whatever. And I mean, in some aspects has been proved completely right. So I do think that we do need to establish what the ground rules of this is, because if we're going to engage with somebody, we need to know who we're engaging with, how we can work with them, and if we can't work with them, how we can get rid of them. Because it's very serious, this. And you know, it's a very serious matter. So I'd like to propose that we write an exploratory conversation with them, not in a provocative manner, but on the grounds that who is putting together the plan, who is in the subgroup, and how does it work with the constitution of the council against the proportionality rules, and see what comes back. Because it'd be quite interesting, because at least it will show that we're watching what they're doing. Because what could possibly go wrong with such a small clique of people looking at something?
Thank you, Robin. Town Clerk, is that acceptable as a proposal?
Who specifically do you want me to write to?
You specifically write to the cabinet member for planning,
Okay.
because it's a political question in the sense of that, and you copy it into the director of planning for information, because it's for the cabinet member for planning to ask why the subgroup is formed in the way it is. It's for the director of planning to answer legalities and the framework they're working in. The cabinet member may be able to give an answer, but he isn't a legal officer. He can't speak on behalf of the council.
Narrow the proposal down to something that
Yeah,
that Paula can type in.
Yeah.
So you want me to write to the cabinet member
yeah,
and ask specifically?
yeah. And copy the director of planning to it, because he'll then tell the cabinet member the legal basis that he can answer, because he won't know it. I wouldn't either.
Okay. Paula, have you got?
So the proposal is,
I know, but if we're going to vote, we need a clear proposal.
Yeah.
We haven't got a second yet. That's why it's just
So,
finding out that that was acceptable as a.
well, it is on the agenda.
Yeah. Fine.
And so it does relate to something on the agenda, so I don't have a problem with that. I just need to be a little bit of a
Thank you.
more specific proposal.
Yeah. May I have a seconder then?
It's a written question. I can't-
John?
Yeah.
Yeah, seconded by councillor Harvey. Who'd like, anyone else like to speak on it? No? Right, we'll put it to vote then. All those in favour?
Are you happy, Paula, that you know what the proposal is? Because I'm not happy that I know what that proposal is.
Needs to be done in minutes.
so councillor Studby proposed that we should write to ask who is putting together the plan, who is in the subgroup, and how it works with the proportionality.
Okay.
And
The member's happy, that's what you voted.
and the constitution of Buckinghamshire Council.
Fine.
That would be an interesting.
Yeah, on constitutional matters, I think one of the key issues that Town Council paper raises is about which committee is being used to make decisions about planning matters in our area. I've just been looking for it, but unable to find it. There are criteria which determine whether a planning application should be reviewed by the strategic committee and whether it should be reviewed by the local committee. I think that both of those applications should have gone to the local planning committee.
Yeah.
And should not have gone to the strategic committee, because to my mind, what the strategic committee is being used for, and I don't think this is right, simply as political cover. Because better give it to a committee with councillors who never come from this area and will never hardly ever be here, and get them to make a decision in favour of what developers want, rather than actually have local councillors with local accountability. You'll be voted on by people locally in elections having to make decisions. And I think we need to really uncover that. So I would also that we get clear, because I can't find it, but Catherine could find it. And I do it in the morning. And I can't. It's just what criteria are used to determine whether an application goes to the strategic committee or the local committee, and see whether that is being enacted, not just here, but around the county. But let's try and get clarity first on what the constitution is.
Thank you for the proposal, John. Could we second for that? Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else?
I'll just make a comment to it. It's not contradict what John said. In my correspondence on these matters, I asked those questions And the answer I received on mainly the Mays Morton
We have
Road
asked
3
for-
application, which not lesser and probably actually also the Mays Morton application, because you remember I commented on it in the sense that around this was that they were part of Vale of Aylesbury Development Plan. The answer came back that they then were strategic. But what you are right about is developments up to 400 houses should be done by the local planning committee.
Yeah,
Now, the person who chooses whether they are to go in what committee would be the officers, I presume, of the council. But in both cases, they were well known and talked about applications. They were historically known, but they were both done and was Osier Way. Osier Way, which you forgot to mention, was done by the Strategic Development Committee, which
It is 420, so that's.
loosely above it, yeah. But that was done by all three came against the local view. But I think you're right to ask the question, but I think that's what they'll come back with, because they were part of the Vale of Aylesbury Plan. The questions I've asked, that's the answer I've got. I don't agree with the answer, but that's the answer I've got. It'd be interesting to see if we get a different answer to the one that we've already possibly received.
John?
Well, if the criteria in the constitution say point F, anything else we want to make up, fair enough. But if it's not there, any reference to Aylesbury, Vale of Aylesbury local plan in any shape or form, then they have stepped outside and been unconstitutional in how they've made the decision.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, both Pat Hardcastle and I, when we were dealing with Aylesbury with the separate applications, both asked the question, why is this coming before strategic and not before the North Bucks? The North
Yeah.
Committee, but they ignored us.
Well, we just sort of keep
Yeah,
asking.
so, well, we've got the proposal, we've got a seconder. Anyone else wish to speak? All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Are you clear with that? Paula? Thank you very much. Yeah, well done.
Two answers will be useful.
Let's move on then to action reports, which is Appendix C. Just having a quick look through cycleway on Railway Walk, Town Clerk, any update on that?
It's complicated, lots of discussion going on.
So still continuing discussions, okay, we'll leave that as obviously standing item. We have the local plan facilities survey, which is on the agenda tonight. Find out if any planning permission, a prompt was sent out, and you had an answer today, I think. Catherine, is that?
No, that's not.
That wasn't that one.
That was to find out if we need planning permission.
Oh, that's if you need plan. Yeah, this is the one. This is find out if you need planning permission.
You read it out as facility survey.
Yeah, that's sorry. I'd done that, and then I went on to find out if you need planning permission. But
Didn't pause.
we did get an email today, didn't we? That
Oh, we had a conversation.
conversation.
I suggest we probably should go on an agenda rather than figure it out. So it's not going to give you a chance.
It's not going to take us anywhere. There's no point discussing it. It's
Crack on.
it's the legislative framework that's at fault.
Okay.
Right. I'll just read it, the initial one. If all development as defined in planning legislation required the express approval of the local plan authority, councils around the country would be inundated with planning applications. To prevent this, the government has specified various forms of development that, subject to limitations and conditions, can be constructed with the benefit of permitted development rights, so grant planning permission without formal planning application have to be submitted. To prevent costly mistakes, planning legislation allowed people contemplating development to submit details of their proposal and request a certificate of lawfulness, which would confirm whether the proposal does indeed benefit from permitted development rights. This is a statutory device that local plan authority is required to provide. Now, one of the things we said was
That made real good sense, that.
the certificate of they haven't got what it amounts to is a list of file, even just a coloured blob on the file that says permitted development rights have been withdrawn. Now, I've got sort of half a list, which I probably did a long time ago, because some estates like Badgers, some have, some haven't. You've got to know which street we're talking about in Badgers. But they don't actually keep a list. So their officers have to look it up in the planning history, and the planning histories are faulty, which is why the conversation ensued. We had an application in Western Avenue, meeting is this year. It's down the Brackley Road end of Western Avenue. The house was built 20 years ago. That planning application to build it is not in its planning history. So their officers, who don't know this area at all, wouldn't know what the planning conditions on that decision were, because they haven't got the decision in front of them.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to go on.
Anyway, at least.
But what I will do, when I've got time, is just check that the list I've got has not been augmented, and if it has, I'll put the bits in, because at least I need to be able to look and see if EDI's removed, and therefore they can't do what they want to.
Yeah.
And we've actually got proof of this on the next agenda, because I've got a withdrawal and an application, a proper application.
Oh.
But it was on
The full application.
yes.
Thank you very much.
In the same, same day's post, basically, the withdrawal and the new one.
Well, thank you for your work on that, Catherine.
Yeah.
Robin, do you want to?
Yeah, just cycleway, not actions, not to do with anything the town clerk involved in. There was a meeting to discuss the cycleway with.
So we're just on this at the moment.
Well, I thought you were an action list.
Okay, sorry, there's other people wanted to speak on it as well, but do you want to come back to that?
I'll come back to that. It's just that, yeah, okay.
Okay, Anthony, you want to?
I thought we were going down the actions. There was another item on the action.
Okay,
list.
right.
I was trying to get my hand there ready.
Okay, Robin, we're back to you then, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Cycleway. There has been a meeting of your Buckinghamshire councillors with the cycleway. What I can say is that there's discussions about how to implement the cycleway. Don't get confused with the cycleway and the development. They're very different questions. Please don't confuse the two. The cycleway was in a separate section 106 agreement and was in the rights of way of the development. What I can say that the cabinet member was reasonable to addressing the issues and was working on a way of addressing those issues. What he didn't give me clearly was a time. But of course, the standard response is on all these things now is we have to wait till the new contractor gets in place, and then the contractor will have to work a bit of work for it. What I can say is I'm pushing it to be on the front end of that works, but this won't be done in isolation with the cycleway, because the council's looking at other access and cycle issues in conjunction. So if it comes forward, or when it has to come forward, because it has to be done, but it will come forward, I suspect, amongst many other proposals about cognitivity. So there is something happening, which I'm hoping will be in a position that then they will consult the town clerk. So I think then the town clerk will lead the conversation on behalf of the town council at that point, I think, which is the proper way.
Thank you, Robin. Anthony.
Thank you, Chair. I was just looking at, I think it's page 3 of the action list, the West End Farm archaeology. I just wondered where we were at, because I hear whispers on the wind about the things progressing, but I don't know if there's anything on the action list about that.
Sorry, the last email I had was, I'm literally looking at it now, on the 3rd of March. I had an exchange. I can read it out to you. I thought I had circulated it, but I'll read it out anyway. Pleased to say that things have started to move forward again regarding the archaeological remains excavated on the site. We've received a draft scope for posted excavation works from Network Archaeology for the West End Farm site. This outlines what analysis will take place as part of the post-evacuation assessment, including radiocarbon dating to determine how old the skeletons are, and DNA analysis to look for family relationships. This is good news, but it means the questions we have asked about the boroughs are starting to be addressed and post-excavation work is moving forward. I'll keep you posted as I hear more regarding timescales and once I'm sure scientific analysis is underway. And if I didn't circulate that, I'm really sorry.
I think you did.
You did.
I remember
you did.
reading
I
that.
just wondered if there was any, I'm always looking for the latest news.
So that was the third, and I've not had anything since.
Thank you very much, Claire. That's very helpful. Robin, is there something you wanted to add to that? Or?
Only that it mirrors my email of the 3rd of March identically, which is really nice that we've got to a stage where that we're the emails are being shared to the town clerk on the same basis. What I will say on it, that my email of January the 10th, which shows how much work the officers have done, they were still in negotiations to discuss the post-excavation works on January 10th. So I think it is really good that we've moved from January the 10th to March the 3rd, where we're now talking about the DNA analysis to look for the family relationships, which is very important, the family relationship between the bodies within the ground, to find out whether they were individuals or whether they were groups of people who were buried together. And also to look at the DNA analysis, which town clerk said, and the Historic England, who have provided some useful feedback, suggestions that they'll work with the archaeologists. So I think, considering where we were 3.5 years ago, where we happened to find out by a resident that there was a dig going on in there and nobody knew anything about it, and we actually, as a community, raised it in the public domain. Coincidentally, it was picked up at the time by the Smithsonian magazine and ended up going across America, which meant I got emails and Stuxbury's in America and asking I related to them, which I probably was. But no, we are moved on, and I think that this is something that that was in the 3rd of March. Judging by the gap in it, I'm hoping by next month we might get an update on what they find. But as there was over 80 bodies, that's and some were buried face down in the grave. I can imagine that they'll be looking to see whether there's any mortal wounds on them, and whether they were battered or what. But there wasn't much, from what I could understand from earlier correspondence, there wasn't much what they call archaeological historical material found, and only stuff that you'd find in the trace soil, which buckles, which is in the upper soil, could have come from anywhere else. So clearly these poor people didn't have a very pleasant end and weren't well dressed in their best finery, let's suggest. So this is a step forward, and I think that I'm sure the town clerk will have wrote back to the officer. I don't like using officer's name in meetings. I'm sure we'll write back to her and thank her for the update, and that we look forward to a further. I know you would. Yeah, because I think we should persist with doing that, because they can't speak for themselves in meetings.
Thank you, Robin. Right, just the rest of the action list. New disabled days. You remember we objected to the one in respond. We have responded, and there was an auto acknowledgement on the 28th of February, so we're just waiting for news on that. It's ground next to 12 Bridge Street, which Don kindly brought to our attention. The area has been levelled and covered with slate chippings and bollards alongside the roadside. The shop has been renovated. It looks as if it's going to be offered with its own parking. So, John, thank you very much. You were very vigilant on that. And,
I walk past it most days.
The estate agent sold signs on Bletchley Road. That was done almost as soon as we drew it to the attention of the agents. So that was a good result.
Yeah.
You're of the Tree, AXA and NFU were contacted. Still no response, I take it.
No, and I've written to the other company, BHIB as well.
Yeah.
I've heard back from them.
Right, okay. And then finally, the care home access form was whether Councillor White is pursuing that. We did send additional photographs to him. Nothing on that. Anything else on the action list? Andy?
Just an item which you just went through, a disabled bay. Can we not still include mother and child bays?
The disabled bay was an individual one,
Yeah.
a resident.
On a Morton
Oh,
Road
that's
estate,
okay.
Whitehead
Yeah.
Way. Yeah,
I don't think mother and child bays are provided outside sort of,
No.
supermarket,
No, they
hotels,
are.
etc. Are they?
Well, not in
Tesco's have them.
No, I'm saying outside,
Oh, no,
outside all the
No.
super, not on public
no,
roads.
I think they should be.
Uh,
There's a lot of disabled bays. So waitress, they know, you're in child bays because they still have to go shopping.
yeah, we weren't opposing the disabled bay up there, we're opposing its location.
yeah,
Facing road, it was on a road junction.
yeah,
And,
too close.
John?
I was simply going to ask the question is how much would we have to pay the archaeologists to prove a link to King Arthur with these 18 skeletons? Is there a figure that they would like to quote us?
Help the tourism.
Yeah.
Robin?
As my family dates back,
Robin, could we just to check, please?
yeah, my family dates back to 1086. I'm willing to provide them my DNA to see if I'm related to either section of the.
Well, take that up the laptop.
Right, let's move on, everyone. Thank you very much. Item 7.2 to receive and discuss response from Mr. Marsh on the Stratford Road Slick Lane. It's Appendix D on your minutes. I think he's fairly he said it all basically, hasn't he? Telling us what's going on. John.
I think it's a very comprehensive report, and also we're grateful for that. The one omission seems to be that there is already there's already a lane designated for turning left, which makes it very easy to turn left, and indeed the lane markings are even visible on Google Earth.
Yeah. He obviously wants 2 left turn lanes, but
Yeah, it's a big difference for the volume of traffic.
not quite sure where he expects them all to go. But Robin?
The justification for this is the Buckingham strategy,
Yeah.
which was ignored totally by the district Vale of Aylesbury Plan in its conclusion, yet has come back under the new unitary to be the policy, because there is no other transport strategy. Now, I think the question really is, if they're holding hard and fast to the necessity within the incremental development, making contribution to pinch points in the roads, what we should go back to them and ask them, because it does say in transport strategy about the western bypass. And it also states it, I mean, it's a public document, I think we should have it circulated and read it, especially as we're putting together the neighbourhood plan. Because if the council is going to hold fast to these type of incremental contributions to supporting whatever, you know, the western bypass area was somewhere where they said they'd take contributions out, which was diminished by the Vale of Aylesbury Plan, if you recall, who decided to take sites out, and which is why we discussed earlier why we had let houses at Mays Morton and why we had Osier Way. So I think it would be worth some point going into a conversation with them about how much of the Buckinghamshire Transport Plan they're actually going to bring into play, or is it chosen areas of the Buckingham Transport Plan? Because if they're going to use it, they should use its entirety to support infrastructure in Buckingham. I think that's a very reasonable question, a very reasonable question to ask. Will you be relying on it for support for specific areas, or will you be relying on it in its entirety?
Are you implementing the whole thing?
Yes. Are you implementing? Because if we get that answer that they're implementing the whole thing, when we come to development, and we can then state that we was the contribution taken from that development to the western bypass. Coincidentally, the Osier Way development contributed £800,000 to dual the Buckingham bypass. In its Section 106 agreement, it's got £800,000 to join the Buckingham bypass, which is which, had they followed the Buckinghamshire Neighbourhood Development Plan, transport plan, they should have been contributing £800,000 to the to solving the western bypass. £800,000 might have got us an entrance of the roundabout, but it would have contributed. So it seems that they're either using the policy for this which we're in disagreement with. So if they're going to use things we're in disagreement with, they need to know if they're implementing the entire document or whether they're implementing sections of it. And I think that's a very reasonable question.
I'd like to propose that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Seconded by Lisa.
I went through it 3 times, but I enjoyed
Anyone else
it.
want to speak on that? No, all those in favour then? We write this letter. That's unanimous. I still have an action report 7.3 to receive a response from the cabinet member, Councillor Peter Strachan, the consultation local facilities to the Buckinghamshire Plan. Actually, I think an excellent letter. Catherine wrote a very good letter saying to him, including a lot more details than they'd requested. And he's come back and said thank you. That's very, very helpful. I think that's a real positive.
Gracious.
Exactly right. Thank you. We can move on to planning applications then. So the first one is right next door here, 12 Acorn Place. The determination as to whether prior approval is required in respect to transport and highway impact, noise, contamination risk, flooding and local considerations, the change of use of commercial businesses for 2 flats. These would be above Hair Host and the wine shop. There are 7 objections, none of them from local people, and they're all regarding the late night restaurants and bars, saying that they would be forced to close down if these flats are built, which is a little bit disingenuous. They also draw attention to possible rat infestation because of the refuse bins behind. They are closed bins, by the way. Highways that they want a parking layout, they can make a decision, but I would point out it's a town centre application this, and parking does not come into it. And then finally, there's no response from economic development normally, they're very hot usually. As far as we're aware, these have only been empty for about 3 months. They have had to let signs in the window, but we're not aware they have been advertised for 12 months, which is what economic development would normally want. So what's the feeling of members? John?
I have no objections. I think if the space is not being used, and in this case, I quite favour mixing residential with retail use. I think it's actually healthier. The objections are intriguing. That reminisces a little bit of that sort of next to the stables, and they were worried that people would move in and negatively about the noise and get the stable shut down. But there's something along those lines that they're objecting to. But I have no objection.
Fine. Well, if we can follow procedure, I will propose, and Anthony seconds. I propose that we raise no objection, subject to economic development being happy with it. Seconded by Anthony. All those in favour? Thank you. That obviously Robin would be voting on that. So. The next one is number 4 West Street. It's a display of a sign tray, menu board, spherical canopy and projection sign for what will be a Greek restaurant. It's on a listed building. The main points about this are that 3 of the signs, the canopy, the projecting sign and menu board, are all internally lit on the application, which obviously goes against conservation area. And also the photoshopping they put on page 39, the Greek House Salaki sign is massively too big for a listed building, and I would suggest that should be smaller. John?
Well, I agree. When I saw that, I thought, oh my God, something a bit more subtle. I think it would be fine, of course, but not in there.
Yeah. Anthony?
The Buckingham Society, which I am representing this evening, because poor Carolyn is unwell and Roger wasn't available at short notice. They all wanted to put sunglasses on when they saw the list. However, from my small experience of Photoshop, I think somebody's just smacked that on and picked a bluey colour. And I suggest, and at least my suggestion that actually I suspect that the blue will be closer to the Greek flag and the white. This is fairly classic Greek cafe.
It's a much
And,
paler blue.
and will be, nevertheless, I agree with you, Chair, that it's too big. I mean, let's make it a bit smaller, a little more discreet, a little less poke your eyes out, and we're there.
Right. I would also add, as Catherine said in her report, that there is already projecting arm for a sign,
That's right.
and we would suggest that they use that
Yeah.
rather than
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
one. So on those grounds, with those grounds, I propose that we have no objection.
No objection, but.
Yeah, we're on those grounds. Yeah.
Yes, I'll second.
Seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. Yeah, we got that one.
Look forward to them coming to town.
Next one, old friend of ours, number 2 Mallard Drive.
Oh,
You remember this is the property at the entrance to Freefields where they had to remove the fence. The household application has been closed porch and side extension. You would have seen Catherine's report. The main thing is it's got they've put a second porch pillar out front, and it does come out further to the front. The whole property is fairly well hidden from the road. Anyone have any comments? John, you were on this week.
I do, and I don't think I have any objections. I kind of wonder what they're going to get apart from the cloakroom. But I think it's going to change the line because the houses aren't directly in a line there anyway. So
There's no building line.
I think there's no objections. Don't quite understand.
In that case, I propose no objections. Seconded by Councillor Ralph. All those in favour? Thank you. Getting through this one. What could possibly go wrong? Next is 65 Western Avenue. It's a householder application for a new roof over existing storey kitchen, insertion of new bathroom window to side elevation. Everything looks well, except Catherine has pointed out that they have left a small window on the proposal drawings, which shouldn't be there. It's just a question of pointing out that shouldn't be there. Does anyone have any comments on this? No, in that case, I propose no objections. Seconded by Councillor Ralph. All those in favour? Done. Thank you. Right, that Western Avenue application, which Catherine has noted, has not yet had a planning notice put up. So
it's goodbye, so then.
we reserve that for neighbours' comments.
Yeah.
The next two applications together, White Hart Hotel, this is a planning application and a listed building application. It's a fairly major internal alterations, refurbishment of the premises at all floor levels and external alterations to replace an existing spiral fire exit staircase at the rear and alterations to the terrace and to the garden areas. There's a couple of things we picked up from Catherine's report. The parking bays are too small, going by Buckinghamshire Council standards, but then she adds that they're not obliged to follow those standards.
No, it's the numbers they're not imagined.
So the numbers, is it? Not the size.
They don't have to relate to the number of parking spaces, to the number of bedrooms.
Ah, right, okay.
Right.
But the parking,
The sizes still have
the
to.
parking bay size they do.
Parking base size.
Right, so
They should be.
they should be larger than shown here. The other thing is, as yet on the documentation, there's no signage application. And one would presume they're going to be changing signs at some point if they're doing.
Well, the drawing actually says that they're going to put the welcome sign on the back, but that's just a label on the drawing, so
Right.
nothing to tell you what is.
And one of the things,
or anything.
one of the things that's come up is there will be external TVs supplying the rear terrace, and these will be facing Markham Port. So members may wish to comment on that. Anthony, first.
I'm happy. Again, with my Buckingham Society hat on, they were concerned about the possibility of noise, particularly for Candle Court, Markham Court, and the local neighbours, because the most popular thing that's going to be on those televisions is sport, particularly football and similar, and everybody together with some alcohol is going to get jolly excited, and they're not all sit there with their fingers on their lips, are they? So there was a concern, but
But the society's happy about the rest of it?
Look, yes, yeah, pretty okay. There was a slight, will it interfere with the street scene, but it's a marginal call, I would say. Bear in mind, it's an entrance into the town.
It's also tidying up the site, which is fairly scrappy.
Well, yes, of course, yes. So it was a balance on that.
Yeah.
But it was mainly the noise was a potential concern.
Yeah. John?
I'd go along with all of that. I think it's a development that's good to see. But the TVs just went, oh my God. I don't think that's a good idea. I think if they're going to have people want to watch telly, they should do it inside, because cheering and whatever, no, not appropriate unless it's for
Yes, agree with you, John.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is, in principle, we have no objection to what they want to do, but we want to raise concerns about the parking bay, size of the parking bays, and the provision of television, external televisions facing Market Court.
Yes. Potential noise pollution from their neighbours.
I mean, the bottom line is, it's good that the White Hart is going to spend a lot of money. When you look around in the town and villages, pubs are closing everywhere. And so I propose along those lines then.
Yep, and I second that.
Seconded by Anthony. All those in favour? Thank you, that's everyone. Once again, there's no public notices on that yet.
Okay.
Do you want me to make that no objection subject to environmental comments?
Which was the one on?
The TVs, you mean?
For the TV.
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
There's no indication at all of noise level.
Okay.
We know what
Good point.
TVs are.
Good point. Yeah, and also the signage, of course. Subject to signage. The listed building, the parking base.
Yeah.
Fine. So this one's 19 Bridge Street. This additional information has been received about changing the description from subdivision of the existing dwelling in formation of 2 one-bedroom dwellings. What they've done basically, they've now put the first floor plans in, which they hadn't put in previously. I think you said there's nothing we need to do on this.
No, because there's no change to the first floor. It's just that they haven't put the plan in, and obviously the planning inspector on the appeals said, well, I want the rest of the plans.
Good.
There's a fairly roundabout thing which we made before.
And then finally, number 8, not for consultation, the Oaks.
Oh, you were going to mention that their response said that the front plan from.
Oh, yes. Anthony is waiting to tell us about that.
Well, I was just, yes, and thank you, Catherine. Yes, I mean, the front of the building is extremely unsightly. It's an entrance to the town, and it's close to, the neighbourhood. They really ought to do something, and yet the agent in his submission says it falls outside planning. Well, I would disagree with him. It does fall well inside, because it's detrimental to the street scene to leave what looks like an overgrown building site in front of the property.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's not only is it in the conservation area, it's also surrounded by listed building.
Well, that's right.
Yeah. So I think that's what we just need. Is that just looking at his actual words?
This is his last one, isn't it? It's
I'm sorry.
yeah.
It's scrolling.
Yeah, we are. Number 5, the front garden proposals are not subject to planning determination.
Yeah.
But I think they
we
are.
would strongly disagree with it.
Yeah.
So how do we be that bad?
Well, I've got the response sheet.
Oh, right, okay. Well, that is noted. Thank you, everybody. Right, number 8, I mentioned the Oaks Manor Gardens. This is lime that needs work on it. It's about reducing the regrowth to previous reduction points. Turns out I was the only person who replied by email, so it's up. And I said I had no problem with it. It's up to the committee to decide.
Fine.
It's just taking it back to its previous trimming point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and limes, as we know, grow fairly quickly. So.
Yeah.
Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, planning decisions. You've got the list in front of you. It's worth drawing attention to 35 Lace Lane. This is the HIMO, which we opposed on the grounds that many of the parking problems, we felt 7 people was too much. It has been approved on the grounds that the lot conversion would not cause significant harm to the appearance of the host property or the local area. They then go on to say about the parking, while the proposal will result in a shortfall car parking space, it's not any greater than the lawful position, is not considered to result in material harm which would justify refusal of the application. You either have a standard or you don't.
Yeah.
I still can't get my head around this.
Yeah.
Finally, about the HIMO, it did already have planning HIMO permission, which was given to it in 2019 and then varied in 2021. That was for 6 people. Because this is more than 6, this application, it comes out of class C4 and becomes 3 generous. But so what they're saying is one more person there would not cause any problem. The actual wording was the existing lawful use for 6 occupants is afforded significant weight as a realistic fallback position. It's not considered the intensification of use associated with 2 additional bedrooms or occupants would result in any degree of harm which would warrant refusal. Margaret.
Yeah, thank you. Does that mean that if I wanted to make my house into a HIMO, the best way is to start off with a lower number than I intend to end up with, and then incrementally increase the number of such rooms?
That would seem to be it.
Which seems again contrary to the spirit of what's intended.
Yeah. Catherine did point out to us at our briefing this afternoon that we're not notified with HIMO application. There's no statutory obligation to do that. So we didn't know about it until the residents drew our attention to it. The first one, as I said, was in February 2019. And at that time, nobody had raised about the planning covenants on Bay Hill, saying that the houses have to be for occupancy by single families. No one ever raised it. Obviously, that's now history, but we're 4 years down the line from that. So, Robin.
The 2019 date's really quite key. 2019 was Aylesbury Vale District Council. Aylesbury Vale District Council agreed the planning for the development. Aylesbury Vale District Council would have known that at that time it had a covenant on it because they'd only really were still in 2019. They hadn't actually built, were very close to building the last house. I think it's leaving us the fact that it had a members' call-in which was overruled by the normal route, which is chair and office on the highways ground, which is the very points that you all are concerned about. How we go forward with this, I think we need to remind them that it was this town council who discussed HMOs in the first place. It was this town council who then sought to have a motion to the district council to actually bring what was Article 4, but it ended up as licensing commands. So then generated an Article 4 directives. I think we need to see whether there's an understanding, because this is a licensing issue, it's a planning issue, and licensing isn't something that we're automatically consulted on. But in the fact that it's a new authority and they are only technically 2.5, 3 years old, the right to whether they'll consider if there's an HMO, a new HMO, which is being proposed, whether they would consider contacting town council in case there is a planning matter in relation to the HMO. That's the key point, because we've already know there was a planning matter, as the chairman quite rightly says, in 2019 in breach with we could have informed them of that had we known that the HMO had been granted. I do think the mayor makes a very good point, though, that obviously you start with a small number and go up. But of course, they would argue they didn't do it that way, but it's a business, isn't it? But I'd like to propose that we write very much in those terms to them, whether they consider notifying us. We are a very large town. We're not a parish in the sense we are a town. And with the town, that there is huge difference between a town and a parish and the types of properties you do. As we recognise that there is a need for more economic accommodation, we'd like to be part of the conversation because it could raise planning issues which we will know about as a local planning committee or local town council. I don't think that's an unreasonable ask. They can write back and say, well, they won't do that, in which case then we can have a conversation about why they won't do it. But let's ask them politely whether they consider that, which would give Catherine the chance to inform the committee, and then her knowledge about everything else would help us come to a better conclusion with this application, which may have been steered away at the onset if they'd recognised, as the chairman said.
We've got 550 houses to actually built on 2 new sites, and who knows how many of those there might be.
Exactly. I think we need to start somewhere.
A seconder for that, please. Lisa, thank you. Right, all those in favour that we write that letter? Thank you very much. Excellent. Other planning matters refused. You'll notice that the VETS 1415 High Street was slipped down. It has actually been approved, not refused. Those care calls.
Whether you want me to know.
Oh, yeah. Go back to that. So other matters, yes, this is about the King's Head. We raised the subject of the apostrophe being removed in all the King's Head signage. The application had been approved, but the planning officer very kindly said that he would leave it to the town council, discuss this aspect directly with the applicants, and should an apostrophe be added to the signs, it would be deemed de minimis in terms of the plan, so it wouldn't affect the planning permission. John?
Well, I'm mindful of what Fran said last time, in that when things are in capitals, you tend to leave out apostrophes. So I'd propose that we leave them be, and we don't try and negotiate with them at all about whether to put an apostrophe in there or not. And it becomes a talking point. Well, the heck. My view is they've designed it now to put in the apostrophe would change it quite a lot, and I'm not sure they would. I think we need a bit dark.
Is that the general opinion?
Yeah, it's a bit micromanaging, isn't it?
Just let it slip.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for drawing your attention, Catherine. There are more important things, aren't there?
Yes, but at least we've got a community come to and say what about this.
More
Yeah. Got to say that.
Withdrawn St Rumbold's Fields, 9 additional houses that were approved, I think in 2017, they've decided not to continue with them. It was pointed out at the time that the red roofs that were planned to have would be visible on the horizon because it was on a high point of ground. But you made a good point today, Catherine. It means that we can now carry on with the town.
It means that the original street plan is still valid because they're not trying to squeeze the extra houses in and delete streets, which means that Amanda can go ahead with the town map.
A result. Thank you very
It's
much.
about time we had St Rumbold's on the town map.
True.
People keep asking us for, so they can send it to their aunties and the apps.
Yeah.
And then finally, refused trees, Waglan's garden. We opposed the group of Lawson cypress being either felled or drastically reduced. Second time we have had a refusal for tree work in Waglan's garden. Robin?
I propose that we go there for midnight summer solstice and dance around them, carrying cider or something.
I'm sorry, you can't. It's the dividing hedge between there and Chandler's Close.
Well, we could
It's a big steep down to Chandler's Close.
yeah, well, I mean,
Robin's kind of cigarette set part of the tree.
so, thank you.
Thank you.
No, but I think it is worth noting. I mean, perhaps we should, on the same basis, if we say something which hasn't happened negative, it'd be nice to actually say we objected to this and those trees are staying. And do you understand what I mean?
We have to use the words enough is enough.
Yeah, and I think it would be something,
Yeah.
we agreed that this, last year, this year, whatever it's going to be, we wanted to focus on trees, so
Yeah.
I think we should do a press release about we're pleased that they're staying, because I think people need to know that you have made an action as a committee and you have had a result, and that from your questions that those trees are staying, which I think is a really good thing to say.
Being near the tree, of course.
Yeah, which I propose that we make a press release around those aspects.
Yes, everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
Good to stick with that. Thank you very much, Robin. Right, which brings us neatly to Robin, Buckinghamshire Council Matters.
Yeah.
To receive news of Buckinghamshire Council new documents, and you have
Sorry, I just went up to
sorry,
my notes, excuse me.
any Buckinghamshire Council new documents that we need to bring to the attention of members?
Nothing that I've not already circulated.
Right, thank you. And then to receive anything else from Buckinghamshire Council members present?
I can give you a brief outline, which you'll be dealing with. You will be aware that Buckinghamshire Council go live with the new contract, which is Buckinghamshire Council Alliance, which is going to be called original name Buckinghamshire Highways, and which will be a partnership between Atkins and Vale to Beatty.
This is replacing Ringway.
Yes, correct, Chairman. There'll be within that there'll be introduction. There'll be a highways team and highway clients team working together to deliver the contract. There'll also be they'll introduce network managers, which will be underneath those will be network managers, which will be working with the teams above the client teams. Underneath that, you'll have your community liaison team, which will be liaising, which very much will be involved with the local area technicians, which the planning and officers deal with at that level. So, of course, Vale Beatty appointing their own set of people to support their set of the contractor, and they're all in place. Atkins have appointed all their inter-council team, which are all in place. Clearly, those won't be people which the contract Atkins and Vale Beatty won't be people that we would talk to, because we would talk to Bucks Highways about that, and they would talk to the contractor, because that's how it works. There's going to be contract scope working with the client, so they're going to actually work out the contract's got to be scoped out, the work when it comes to a project. Lots of contract with Atkins and Vale Beatty will be agreed and worked out as they go forward. There can be a very big change in the sense you've got two, like Ringway Jacobs was one part of transport, but this is two clients, so it's going to be interesting to see how it works out. But of course, that gives you a brief outline of what's going to happen. This all comes live on the 1st of April, which is a really, if I was going to start anything in my life, I would always choose the 1st of April to actually start it. It's such a good date, isn't it? But so I'm hoping that isn't going to predict the way that it's going to work. Let's hope that it's a success, and let's hope that the new working and that can deliver things. Now,
but is there any indication they're taking on current staff who know the area well?
Well, it looks. I'm not. There is an overall lead officer, which I won't talk about in the meeting. We'll talk in the office about these things, which we can go back and ask further questions. My presume is that they were very ill-advised not to take over the many offices, and some of this has been taken back in-house to Buckinghamshire, rather there's a name Buckinghamshire Highways. Some of these works which they were not, I don't think the new cabinet member or the cabinet member wanted to bring something back in-house to have more control about the delivery of it and the proportionality of it. So I think, to be fair to them, it is early days. Downside of this is that many of the things that we're waiting to be delivered, like the railway walk project, and these are going to have to go for the new clients to be priced up and whatever, so there's going to be a delay in that. So I hope it works. That's enough on that. On the other matters to do with it, I am personally now joining the Bucks, West Berks Regional Health. So I'm going to be representing Buckinghamshire on that. So that's going to be interesting in the sense that I sit on HASC and I sit on that. So I should know, as long as they don't talk about my own personal health and bad habits, I think I'll be fine. You know, but nothing like being a hypocrite and advising other people to do the right thing, is there? So that works out. And from a local perspective, on Thursday, you will recall, some of you, I hope, that we had members of the public come into the meeting back some months back about the nitroxide on the bypass and the fact that the bypass hadn't been monitored, and the fact that we, the council, were saying they wasn't going to monitor it. Well, being that I have things pop up, I'm going on Thursday to question them about the very part of the A421, because the A421, as we all discussed, has now got so much more traffic on it. The properties are so much pushed up against it. And with the new development, which was agreed, which I think we pointed out, correct me if I'm wrong, at the time, that it was close to the road and there'd be pollution. So I'm going to ask them whether they're going to have to do testing on the highway. Also, the fact that they're scoping out a report on an A421 dual carriageway, I think that they need to assess the pollution while they're scoping that report out. We'll see how that goes. On a good news front, you may be aware or not aware that I've been questioning children's services for a close on decade on and off, about provision for children with special education needs. It does fit into it because it's to do with education. They are finally, Bucks Mental Health Trust, in a response to me on Tuesday or Wednesday of last week, have said that they've now had a grant, what they call for commission services, for a 3-year grant to move some of these works forward. So that, for the first time, means that they're going to work with our schools and whatever to try and move some of the children who are waiting for EHCPs or whatever forward. So all the questioning has been well worthwhile and all the pressure has used that. So I think we have to hope that succeeds. But that's where we'd like it to be. But I have both been to Cabinet and it moved very quickly, that story. But I hope that'll be enough for now. I can carry on for a day, but that'll be enough for now. There were relevant things today. I hope they are at least interesting to you and at least inform you about some of the stuff that we deal with as a community and as a town council.
Anyone have any questions for Robin on that? No, thank you. Let's move on to 10.2, which is received for information only details of the parking and protection arrangements linked to blocking up the floodgate in Candle Court basement. I think we discussed this at length, didn't we, when we were looking at the Candle Court application last time. John?
Well, looking at the picture, it seems to suggest there's going to be some fencing put in. So the exclusion fencing.
Yeah, the red lines.
So at the moment, is there fencing? I don't think there's fencing there, but there's water mostly in the way. So what fencing is going to be put in, to what height, what detail can they just do it? You know, do they own the land? I thought the land was, I mean, certainly there's a path across it. I don't know whether it's actually Shire Council owned land or not. But there is it a permitted way? What's the details of that path? Is there any risk of people who want to walk on that path, which I do regularly, being in some way inhibited? Can we find out more?
This is while the work's going on.
Just while the work's going on?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not permanent then? Are you sure?
No, it's just a slight boundary.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
They're going to have machinery coming in to do it. They need the space.
Okay.
Okay.
Robin?
I think we should, in all seriousness, remind them about the trees which are there. There are some really good specimens of trees on that island area between that and the water. Maybe they should make sure that they actually don't damage the trees, because a good bang with a digger may open it up to disease. And they are very healthy at the
Maybe
moment.
we should get some photos of them before they start work then.
And I think my recollection is, you remember we had a long elongated discussion over many years of actually getting the access along there to actually get to the Meadow car park. So
The footpath there.
yeah, I think it's on the rights of way map. And it may be a permissive right of way, not a full right of way. I think we need to check whether it is, because if it is, as I think it is, a right of way, they have to put a specific notice up. They can't just block a right of way. So we perhaps should inform rights of way that it's taking place, because there's a whole process they have to go through to do with blocking up and the right way.
We have a local officer name.
I know. But because quite frankly, if they get passes, come and question us, we haven't done it, and it will probably delay the release 3 months.
It's not a right of way on that side.
It's not a right of way. It's
It is on the other side of the bridge, on the other side of the state park, but not on the kind of.
no, not on. But no,
The side of the bit that goes to the bottom of Verney Close Woodland. So they're looking to take small
it
machines
is a right of way.
from the car park.
So the bit through the spinning,
Yes.
yeah, that's a footpath.
Yeah. So they have to go through a whole procedure of closing the footpath and altering it, which is a planning procedure, which they should have notified you in the previous meeting that they'd actually were going to stop a footpath, even if it's temporarily.
Well, we can raise that.
Because somebody will come back and say, why haven't we asked them questions?
Yeah. Good.
And rights of way will then be able to come to Buckingham, which is always good to get them here.
Could you leave that to Catherine?
Yeah, she was happy.
We'll do that. Thank you very much. 10.3 street naming. This is actually about the new arrangements for police yard. I'm sure you've all got Catherine's plan in front of you. The proposal is the bottom of it on Market Hill will be blocked to traffic. There'll be a bollard of some sort, and the new entrance to police yard will be from the top Summerhouse Hill, which should be opened up. Any comments, Catherine, on that? It's straightforward.
Then we will make sure that that's on the map.
Summerhouse Hill, it's not adopted, is it? Is it still a private road?
I think it's not adopted from the beginning of the housing because it's the same. Because it used to be for access to the back of the whale and things, and that was, I think. But
so will
the boundaries are a bit weird up there.
I think it's private.
So will they have made an arrangement with Summerhouse Hill to?
Well, they must have done because when we had the planning application for the gate and the access before, which went through, there was a document in there that said that they had to talk to Western Homes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we presume the same applies. Yeah. Thank you. 10.4 Growth, Infrastructure and Housing Select Committee. I did actually give a quick report, I think, at the last meeting.
This is so that they've got the actual response list.
Well, it's not actually there. I was just looking. Yeah, that's where I said in the absence of his response. All right.
And that's the complete thing.
Okay, that's not on the
Should be. Should.
Or is that 10?
I think I was telling you,
10.5.
Chairman, I think it went to the previous one.
I gave a quick
It should
report.
be part of Appendix 8.
No, that's all there's in one page, Appendix 8. Right. Perhaps we could put that into the next planning meeting.
It's just for the record.
For the record, thank you. And then 10.5 to discuss the submission of public questions to the select committee. There's a number of issues raised there. If everyone's happy with that, we'll move on to the annual statistics, which we postponed from the 27th February meeting.
Just, Chairman, it might be worth just. We've gone through a cycle of growth infrastructure.
Yeah.
The next meeting will come in the next cycle of meetings. Knowing how difficult it is for you to ask the question, it might be worth going to give you a clue what will be coming up. If you go to the agenda, back of the agenda, there's the work programme. The work programme dates what might be coming up on the next meeting. So if there's anything that you feel that we need to question, it will be within the work programme which will give you a clue what might be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Right, thank you.
That way, because it's difficult for you to prepare, it's such short notice because of this wonderful publicly minded, tongue-in-cheek constitution of the council. When it comes to public questions and having to be in such short time, it would at least give you a chance to scope out anything you wish to do. You know.
Yeah, thank you. Perhaps you have to keep an eye on that.
Well, I am keeping an eye on both of them, and that's why I put 10.5 in.
Thank you.
Because we don't get enough notice.
No.
And what I want is to keep a list of questions that you want to ask, and then when it pops up on the agenda, I can wang it in before, because it's got to be in by lunchtime on Monday. And if it's not a planning week, I don't work Mondays.
Yeah.
But I do get the agenda usually by the previous Thursday, but I haven't got time to circulate to you all and say, is there anything on here you want me to ask a question about?
So if you've got questions, get them into Catherine, but she can put them in the archive ready to ask.
But if you want to look at the action list, it does give you a clue. What they call the work programme. It's basically at the end of the agenda, it's got the work programme. It usually dates what's going to.
Yeah, that's how we've been doing it.
Yeah,
already. So thank you.
I'm lucky. I get a reminder, and I get time and all of you to ask questions.
Excellent.
The agenda. Yeah, work programme.
Yeah, well, I know,
I know, but
I don't know what you wrote, do I?
Got my whole agenda here in case anybody wanted to see what's happening on Thursday at the same time as the neighbourhood plan.
Which I'll be at.
Thank you. So after that, could we move on to Buckingham annual statistics? Catherine, thank you very much for preparing that. Very interesting. Showing the total planning applications, all the different versions. Anyone got any questions on those? John?
Well, I was going to do a quick graph actually, but I think just eyeballing it, it does seem that our hit rate is improved over the last, well, 10 years there. Generally speaking, we are no objecting, and that's been accepted 83% of the time last year, and opposing only 14% of that which we opposed was approved, and 65% agreed with our decision. So that's 65% is the highest figure we've had in the last 10 years by some considerable degree. It was 36% last year, only 8%. So I think we're doing well in the sense that we are on the money.
Yeah, noted. Thank you, John.
I think this is another case of good news in the sense I don't think we did do it immediately, but I do think that you spent a lot of time in the committees agreeing and voting and discussing planning applications, and I think it shows that an acquiescence or more of an agreement on planning applications than was the case. So I think after the tree thing, another date, we should do a communication around. This is the work at the planning committee. You might not realise that we sit and discuss planning applications and we do this, but you can show from our work that our decisions are coming more in line with what very much like John said, really. But I think you do need to communicate what you do, because nobody really would understand the amount of time that you put into it. And I think it's important that they get to do that, because it's not an easy job, is it? And it's not, sometimes can be quite unexciting discussing the conservatory, can't it? But it matters. And I think at some point, can I propose that we do a press release around that in conjunction with the way the planning committee worked over the market. It's unfortunate because the old style of town council meeting, you could have gave a report about this and said it. We haven't got that now. So I think that it's necessary that we do communicate.
Well, I wouldn't correct you, because I have done just recently done my annual.
I haven't read it.
Well, they haven't read it yet, but all this is covered in my annual report. So
in which case,
I don't know if you need a press release.
No, in which case, thank you. You don't need a press release, Chair.
Something like this would probably look good in our Buckinghamshire Matters publication.
Yeah.
But is that not where the chairman's annual reports go?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we've both been snookered, Lee, so let's give up.
Yeah.
We've been done
Right. Now, on behalf of the committee, with all our thanks to Catherine, there's an enormous amount.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
very much, Catherine.
thanks, Catherine.
Okay, agree.
Very good job. All right, update from representatives on outside bodies. Anyone here who's no? We've obviously heard from Anthony on behalf of the North Bucks.
Just to say
Parishes
that I'll
Planning
ask,
Consortium.
I will ask the town clerk, the charter, corporate charter trust to, at some point to bring forward the last trust minutes which were agreed, because we haven't actually put them down. But, because they do indirectly relate to planning.
Okay.
We haven't
Council
agreed.
agreed minutes were supposed to be on the.
They weren't on
Council.
they weren't on it.
Being brought up to the first minutes. Should have had them on the annual accounts for the last councils. Or possibly the night before. We met in December.
Yeah, I don't think they, can we just have them?
Yes, for that, to go on.
Okay.
If we could just have them, I think it's important because they indirectly relate to planning issues. I think
Yes,
it's
indirectly.
indirectly.
And being as they are the minutes of the previous year's meeting,
I think we ought
they're
to.
well out of date.
They're well out of date.
But
But
the accounts are up to date.
the council, right.
Thank you. Buckinghamshire Council committee meetings, and we've obviously already heard this tonight. North Bucks area meeting 8th of March was cancelled, and the strategic site 16th of March there were no Buckingham applications. Enforcement. Report any new breaches. Well, the major one we're going to report tonight, which most of you already know about, is Oddfellows Hall, 48 Well Street, which received its permission, final permission, its certification for student lets on the 2nd of February. They were all self-contained student lets with communal areas for gathering for food, cooking, etc. Neighbours quickly drew our attention to the fact that these were being advertised on websites as holiday lets, self-contained holiday lets.
Oh,
With a
Yeah, let me just
oh my God.
for the most part, they're being advertised either at £95 a night
Oh,
for one room with a double bed and a coffee machine, or for £109 a night for a minimum of 28 nights, which would cost £3,052.
not disputed.
They're one bedrooms with double beds, advertised as wonderful for children of all ages. That's welcome. There is free parking on the premises.
wow.
Do have a look, it's quite
Don't forget
extraordinary.
the electric scooters available.
Yes, electric scooters available everywhere in the town.
What's
Right, we have already reported this to enforcement, and within 24 hours,
We've got a case number.
we've got a case number.
I think the applicant put Pinocchio.
Yeah. It's been pointed out to us, the shared facilities in the basement, which are shown on all the websites, wonderful pool tables and kitchens, were actually ripped out at the beginning of March because the drains blocked.
Oh,
The manhole covers in the courtyards and the internal toilets, etc., are all below all the other manholes
wow.
surrounding the Anglian Water had to attend.
What website it's advertised on, Roger?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
What website?
What
it's advertised
websites?
It's a brand called Yoco.
Yeah. Well, there's another one as well. I took them from two separate. I'll have to let you have it.
on? Yeah, people design for it.
Just seeing if it's on the email list. It's called, yes, Cipro Properties Co Limited, Site Pro CY. You need to look on Buckingham. It shows the owner as someone called Johnny L.
Yes, well, the person that we knew about was.
Yeah, and on this one, Mr. Charles Tech. Robin, well done.
I'm really pleased that both yourself and Michael brought his attention, but there's a serious issue around this.
Yeah.
That, that we may mock, but there'll be people coming to our community totally misinformed about what's available
Yeah.
and paying quite a hefty price for the privilege until such time as the enforcement case happens. Is there a is there an association, or is there a appropriate association that you should be a member of with these things? Because normally, if you're in a trading group of any business, there's an association you'd be in. Because it's not an unusual thing, is it? This
It's actually the things quite complicated.
yeah, but I mean, but
Trade association.
no, but I was thinking it is a case where there needs to be a trade association, because if you arrived with your family to there and you got out and your dog and you looked for your parking and you went outside to find the scooters for your children, you might be somewhat disappointed. And what
That's going to be a case between them and the supplier.
I know,
Yeah.
but
It's not nothing to do with us.
no, but I think it's also reputation, isn't it? This is in our town,
Yes,
and it's not good for the reputation of the town.
but it's privately owned. It's had permission for development. We did tell them about the drains at the time.
Yes. Yeah.
So nothing we need to do tonight, because it has it's now in the hands of the.
Think about
They've
the
got
Wow.
contacts.
I don't want, people coming here and then.
Well, that's beyond the remit.
Yeah,
But you can go away and dislike the town
Can't
for
do
something
it,
which is not really good. We have got a fish and chip shop near, so that's better.
Other important matters here, there's still an outstanding one about cars being worked on at 1 Hilltop Avenue. They were being worked on the pavements on Sunday. We have reported it. There are 6 cars associated with the one property, but at the moment we're unable to get onto the much vaunted enforcement digital website, which doesn't appear to exist at the moment, does it? It's only internal.
Not even sure it's internally. Was a very cagey version of them.
Well, they've done very well. So the mayor's also noticed the same continuing breach. Could we just raise it with them? One Hilltop Avenue. Thank you. That's all my enforcement matters. Anyone else any to raise? Thank you. Actually, having said that, no, that's it. Right. Section 106 Matters, we discuss the quarterly update. Anyone have any, thank you for that, Catherine. Anyone have any?
And you said calling, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry?
You've gone on to section 106 just to comment on scoring requests. Just the 5 point, you missed out 5 point.
Sorry,
Yeah, you missed it at 15.
oh, so sorry, yeah. No, I haven't got to the rolling. Oh, yeah, I've jumped the rolling list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tree felling applications, no change. Thank you for those. Land grab report, no change. And calling requests. Robin.
Just to ask, I am, has the calling gone in for that I've put in on the website, the land adjacent to Whitehead?
Yes.
What did any other member, you asked at the committee, did no other member take
I've
up
got
the
lots of
opportunity?
other people commenting adversely on the application, but there are no other members.
No other local members supported the calling.
No.
Very disappointing, really. I would have thought they would have been interested in the town, but never mind.
The 3 who might have been interested are of the ward.
Well, it's never stopped me calling anything in.
No, but then you're different, aren't you?
I am, I'll agree with that. I am different.
But there are a number of objections to that anyway, public objections.
But I don't think it's a serious matter. And it is a very serious matter, because this application, if it gets to go into conversation earlier with the Constitution and backing it backwards and forwards, my understanding is that if you get a free member calling, It's
Well-
very difficult for them not to take it to committee,
So
but it then ratchets it up would it be,
the request was circulated to all 6.
but the other thing is, of course, what I've tried to have discussions about this confidentially, and that one of the issues is that the chair of the planning committee is also a member, so you almost got, it is, may not be calling stuff in because it's chair of the planning committee. Please can I ask that we remind them that it has been called to committee and ask whether they would like to support the calling. It could be that they've been very busy and they've just missed it. And right to all of the members, because I can't imagine that they don't use that piece of road coming into Buckingham. And if that fails, we'll try and get some people from South Buckinghamshire to help. I'll see if I can get them to help call in. Or Aylesbury, Wickham. You never know. I could probably get some.
I think there's no harm in just.
I'm not
reminding
doing it.
Thank you.
If it's only
It's everyone happy that we do that, but just remind them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else on calling? I did report, of course, on continuing calling by our Member of Parliament to the Secretary of State for levelling up, Mr. Michael Gove. And Greg Smith came back to me last week, as I reported at council, and glad to say that he's reminding Mr. Gove, just chasing it up to see where that's going. So presuming, as we said at the time, the Section 106 agreements are all falling into place, 460 pages, and
Yes.
which Robin, as I reported at the meeting, finally managed to get put into one document. Not just dyslexic people, for all of us. We've all,
Yeah.
But it does help.
Well, it was in 17 sections on the website, not necessarily in the order of pages.
Wow.
So, I mean, I'd have had to print them off as individual 17s and then shuffle them about until they were in the right order.
I did say that one.
Robin did me a great favour there.
Yeah.
Well,
I still haven't read it all.
neither have I, but the fact is we do need to read it because
Yeah.
in all seriousness, because
I took it with me to read on the train.
yeah, you fell asleep. Yeah.
The train journey wasn't long enough.
No. The Bulgarian Express down to.
No, I was only going to Great Britain.
Well, you're definitely not going to read it, go to break, but you might get on the Siberian Express.
so thank you very much.
Chairman, seriously, there is some issues in there because
Yeah, well,
we asked in Section 106 that it should read and was presumably going to read that the land at Maidmorton Road 3 would transfer to Buckingham Town Council if Town Council was to have it.
I believe I passed that and it is in it.
Thank you. That I asked for that specifically to go in, and I'm really pleased that it'll make players' lives much easier than what it is now.
She can set the BMS.
Well, yeah,
No.
but the conversations that the town clerk has to have will be a lot easier there.
well, item 16, again, Section 106 matters to receive and discuss the quarterly update. Is there anything on there that anyone would like to ask about? Thank you very much again, Catherine, for your work on
Yeah.
And
Robin?
that has been circulated to all the other committees as per. the
Good.
agreement.
it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Robin, do you want to add
Yeah, I
something?
just, we do have the Section 106, quarterly update to look at, and it tells us where we are. And there is some important issues around that going forward, with the Section 106, because we're still stuck in Section 106 and everybody else is in still. And I think you remember at council, we discussed the issue, which we were all in agreement with, about health contributions. I think it would be worth having exploratory conversations about, if this application was by any chance agreed, we spoke about earlier, I think we should be sticking our toes in the ground for a contribution to health out of that application and not moving one job till we get it, because that would be think the chairman said we've had 10 applications in so many years, we haven't had any contributions. So I think it's very key, because if you read this, not one of these, it's all playing fields, funding the district council's expenses. And I'm still reeling from the actual fact that you realise that the Swan Pool uplift of the Swan Pool was paid for by the residents of Laysill, the residents of Mays Morton Road 1, and that they ended up with a management company, and even the AstroTurf on the Swan Pool was paid for by Section 106, even though by the district council, even though it was a maintenance issue and not something new. So I think we have
just had 2 bites of the cherry. They had a climbing wall, now that's soft play area.
Yeah, and they took it all out of the developers and those people at Laysill. Now, perhaps we should have a notice outside on the road. All these facilities are paid for by the residents of Laysill, and are going to be paid for by the residents of Laysill for perpetuity to. They've got a management company. I think it is a serious matter. It is a serious matter, Section 106, and how we have that discussion going forward. Because if we do miss these opportunities, this list tells us what you've already informed us, Chairman, that there's no contribution. Yeah, and that was a long way of getting
Yeah, but we keep saying to them, we want to be involved in discussions at early stage, and they keep ignoring it. So you keep banging the drum, but it's
it's grilling, isn't it?
Yeah. John.
Yeah, just wondering what's happened to the land that was allocated under Section 106 to the new medical centre on Laysill. I can't see it in the list here anymore. Has it now gone? Because when I spoke to Dr. Galvin about it at the annual town meeting, he seemed quite relaxed about the fact that it wasn't that big amount of money as far as he was concerned, and if it's gone or going soon, didn't seem to matter to him. So what is the current situation?
It was only for the land, wasn't it?
It was.
It wasn't for the land, yes.
Yeah. I
What's the
presume.
status?
I could tell you.
Oh,
When the original development went forward, there was a section of element of land which you all recall, which was given by a value for an area of land for a health centre.
Yeah.
They moved all the site round. The area where the care home is, and everything, they're all moved round, and this was put in the corner. We discussed it about 12 and 18 months ago, that because their health authority hadn't put any support into taking up the Section 106 land, that they were going to lose it. But they can apply for planning permission on that land, which will still belong to the original owner of the land, and they'll have to purchase the land, I should imagine, from him. Because although it said they had the right to develop it, that land, and they applied for an application on it, they actually had the value of that land in the Section 106. Now, I think we should write to have that confirmed, because that is what's happened. So the value of the land was lost because the health authority didn't take up the offer, take it forward and sign to say that they needed it, which meant that the Swan practice didn't take it up, which meant the council didn't activate it, which meant the value of the land was lost. Land application is a completely different matter. You can apply for a land application on land even if you don't own it. Which, when John says he's very relaxed about it, or maybe he's purchased the land from the owner. Maybe the owner's already given him the land, because although it was cited for that purpose, the value of the land has been lost. I think we should check that out, because I'm sure that's exactly.
Yeah, I don't think Dr. Garrett has purchased anything. The money for the new health centres will have come from NHS England. It's one step away from that, he says. But now with the office of some deputy director, once they sign off on that, it should then happen. And my best guess from what you were saying is that we might see a new health centre at the beginning of 2025, maybe, if things go marvelous about the conversation.
Well,
As well, hang on a minute. But you're absolutely right. Because I mean, NHS will probably just buy the land anyway, or lease it. It's going to be a PFI deal anyway. They're not going to. It's going to be built by the contractor who will lease it back to NHS England. So it's one of those sort of deals that most of us would go. That doesn't sound like a very good idea, but if it's any way of getting capital development into the NHS, then that's what you have to run with. But Rob is absolutely right. We do need to know. Has that just fallen by the wayside? Has that value of that section 106, a bit like the Stratford Road, car park, has it just gone into thin air? We need to have details on that because it strikes me as an appalling waste of infrastructure value to the people of the town.
Because Buckingham Athletic car park money was coming from Leeds Hill, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So presumably this is also long.
it's all tied up into the Lacey section.
Yeah, and
So is it all now timed out?
Once it's
It's not on the list anymore.
it's not on the list, which
Yeah.
means it's gone, which
Right.
means that the land's gone, which means it confirms what I believe to have happened, which has been lots of people said lots of different things about this, all being very optimistic. The only cautionary note that I'll say against all what Councillor Harvey's informed us to is that Vista were in very much similar situation the other day, and they didn't actually get theirs to go forward.
Some people say that.
Margaret?
Thank you. Yes, we did specifically ask about the Bicester situation, and Dr. Gabriel's opinion was it was completely different, although I'm not sure I fully understood.
There
the
are
reasons
obviously, I'm
for
not
that.
sure, there were different reasons.
I'll try
It's
and
not-
adapt them.
basically.
Well, when I attended Bob meeting, which is the regional structural area committee, we discussed all these things. Maybe I'll meet an officer who can tell me exactly what's going on.
I think
But we need to ask the
Yeah.
Town Council what's happened.
We need to ask the section 106 officers.
Yes.
What is the situation on the health centre land on
I
Leeds?
believe if that's correct.
Thank you. Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
We'll do that. Thank
Is
you.
that the proposal that, Jen?
Do you need it as a proposal?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, no.
I propose and we
I'll
write.
second it.
Seconded. All those in favour?
Thank you very much.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much. 16.2, receive and discuss report from Councillor Harvey. John, just before you give this, can I just be absolutely sure that you cleared it with Peter Strachan that this is a public conversation?
I didn't clear it with him, but I've also not recorded anything he said either.
Right, okay, I just
I very
checking,
carefully wrote
because we are a public meeting, yeah.
my response
Thank you.
to what was a private meeting. I have not given any indication as to what he said or didn't say
Thank you.
at all, very clearly. And the information I'm sure about the skate park, that's he will be happy for that to be there because it does set out, and he knows who I am, and does set out the actual current arrangements. So I'm formally propose in the box there, that we keep a close watch on this. So if there's a second of that.
Yeah, seconder, please.
I'll second that.
Lisa has already seconded it.
Just to make comment to it, I wrote to it again today, and I think I wrote to on March 27th, and I've sent another email to them today. No, Don Martin, I sent them today because I wrote to them on the 20th of February. I wrote to the various people within that department on the 20th of February, asking very much some of the concerns that Councillor Harvey is rightly probably figures out, and I put down all the details, because if you remember, on the reason we discussed it in the 20th of February, and I'm sure John will remember this, is that there was an article, wasn't there, John?
Yeah.
Which is why you came to the council on, either Lisa or yourself brought it to us about the fact that the article was John. The article was published. That's where we started that conversation.
Yeah.
I went to them and I've wrote to them today, asking them why they haven't got around to replying to me to my queries to the 20th of February. Failing that, I'll have to just go and hunt them down in an office. But I don't want to use officers' names, but I think the 20th of February to today is probably long enough for an officer to have responded. Don't you?
Yeah.
And I hope the reason they haven't responded is because they're not well, which should be very unfortunate that somebody should have been picking that up.
Thank you. Well, we've got two more proposals after this from Bond, so can we vote on this one?
Yeah.
Second, second, all those in favour? That's unanimous. John, your next proposal.
Well, that is the old chestnut of section 106, and from conversing with him, as I say, I'm not going to reveal what he said in any more detail, but it's clear that we need to know more about the process.
Yeah.
And we don't know enough about the process. So these are all proposals, or take it as one go, that we ask about what exactly happens, when it happens, give us some real examples of what happened with Aylesbury Way and Morton Road Phase 3 developments. And also that we request a special meeting once we've had that, got that information between us as a committee and the local shire councils to talk about where we go with this. And also that we specifically and formally request that all documents regarding section 106 agreements are sent to us as searchable and copyable PDFs, not a certain set of living photographs. And then when we've done all this, we come back to this in a couple of months' time to reflect on progress.
Thank you. Maybe a seconder, please.
Yeah.
Just a comment on it. Well, so,
Seconded by Lisa.
yeah, I just might think that the one thing I'll say is that this is the conversation with the Shire Council should come after you've had your own conversation. I don't think it's going to help you by having a conversation with the Shire Councillors while you do it. This is the Buckingham Town Council question, which you're having a conversation. After that, I think the next meeting would be with the Shire Councillors, because your findings of what you've done would be instructions to the Shire Councillors to take forward your findings and improve it. Otherwise, you're just going to educate them about section 106, of which they took no time to study.
All right, I mean, I agree with the sequencing, Robin.
You understand the sequence?
Of course, I understand what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we need to change the wording on that.
No, but the sequencing then.
Yeah.
Are you happy with the sequencing change?
Yeah, we get our act together in this committee.
Yeah.
And then we talk to the Shire Councillors.
Afterwards.
We're being fully informed and fully understood. And fully with the planning committee what our view is on.
Afterwards, I think otherwise you're going to be. I don't think it's not right.
Well, we are seeking partnerships. Splendid.
Yeah, but that's at the stage after you've found out the information, not being told you don't know what you're talking about, or you're trying to learn what it is.
Yeah.
We put this to the vote then. Everybody's in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. And your third?
And the third one is that, I mean, Catherine's already done much of this work already anyway, but we formally make it as on the next committee. Just to say, you know, are there any real good examples of applications that we've had really good reasons to call in, and then they never were called in? Because the conversation I had with Councillor Strachan suggested that there were other things in play. I think we can find out some data on this again, and then go back to him with informed by that information which Catherine was already underway getting. But if any other member of the committee can remember examples, as I say, our hit rate is improving. So we're not stupid. We know that I think we're all pretty well on that. There are good reasons why we ask things to be called in.
Catherine, is that please? Fine. You have a seconder, please? Seconded by Robin.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank John for the time he put into this and bringing it to us. I think it is constructive. And did you give him the reassurances he needed out of my correspondence?
Thank you.
Well, trying to be progressive.
I know, I know you are.
And conciliatory and partnership and everything else.
I think you're right. That's what I'm saying here. I think.
Thank you. Seconded by Robin. If we put that to the vote. Unanimous again. Thank you very much, everyone. Matters to report any damage to purpose redundant signage from the town. I would like to raise the question of the solar powered traffic panels, which are all along the bypass and they're elsewhere on our major roads. None of them has had any messages of any sort on. No. Certainly this year. They're just sitting there doing nothing. Okay. They cost apparently £10,000 each and they're idle. They're also eyesores. And I propose that we ask Buckinghamshire Council, what is the future of them?
Great.
Have a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Just one other comment. If you notice along the bypass, those of us who experienced the removal of the street lights on the bypass, which we all fought against. And we were told that they had to be removed back in Buckinghamshire County Council days, and they removed all our street
Light
lights.
pollution or something.
Yeah,
Light
air pollution.
Light.
And then they put in solar studs. Most of the solar studs now don't work now. So the whole point was solar studs were going to illuminate the road when you come across. And now most of the solar studs on the 278 works to do with facility development and other areas, the solar studs aren't working. So when you go along it, they took the lights out and the solar studs had to be put in as because they took the lights out, they had to do something to remediate that, and they're not working. And I noticed it when I come home late the other night, actually drove past, I had to come at the other entrance because I drove past Badgers.
So we'll make a note of that as well. The other one is Tindrick Road. Again, the 40-mile-an-hour speed limit still can't be enforced because the top half of Tindrick Road, there's no repeaters. There's only one major sign as you come off the bypass. In fact, there's only one on the bypass coming up to the roundabout. But apparently Steve Essen has this in plan. But until those are all installed, they cannot enforce the 40-mile-an-hour limit legally. So, anyone else have any signage or anything else? In that case, we can move on to chairman's items for information. Only one to announce. Buckinghamshire Council today did put out a press release pointing out that off-street parking will increase by 10 pence on April the 3rd. So that's off-street parking for its car parks will go up from 50 pence to 60 pence. And of course, on-street parking will go up more, but we don't have any on-street paid parking in Buckingham.
The notice posted on the.
Yeah, on the side of the meter, nobody can see it.
So our next planning meeting will be on Monday, 24th of April, following the interim council meeting, and we end this meeting at 9 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
So you got on all right with Peter?
Yes.
You got on all right with Peter?
That's it. It's a bit of a supper, right?
It's a bit weird.
Maybe they got caught under something.
Well, there were several of them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
End of the year.
You got on all right with Peter, Tom?
They're independent, isn't
Victoria.
he? He was independent.
No. No, that ain't Peter Cooper. Wouldn't get to be a cabinet member if you weren't member looking.
Oh, when you are, because I was also.
I mean, they've got into.
No, first you're putting an independent in there.
No. He's still a nice enough bloke.
We could have all kept our tops and said combined.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah.
So you said, didn't you, Margaret, that there was a difference